Hi. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the role of self-esteem in healthy relationships. And I wouldn't even say it's near and dear to my heart. Just in my experience, working with clients and in my own life over the last 15 years, and even before that, but working full time with clients, there isn't a single experience that I've noticed they have that couldn't be improved or isn't negatively impacted by their level of self-esteem. So let's just a couple of things, I'm going to lay out some definitions, what self-esteem is and what it is not, how it impacts boundaries, how it impacts the way you communicate your needs, and even decisions you make in the relationship. So first of all, what self-esteem is two things, two component parts that are sort of parallel. One is your knowledge of your efficacy, that basically you're competent to handle life, whatever life throws at you. Um, Historical references, knowledge that you can take care of yourself, that you'll be okay, that generally you'll be able to communicate through a thing, or any area of competence that you have. But in general, just that you can handle what life throws at you. Um, and then the second component is feeling worthy, and self acceptance. So feeling that you're worthy of good things, that you're worthy of, a fulfilling relationship, feeling that you're worthy of being treated well, people feeling that you're worthy of receiving love is the way it's really critical to apply here. Now, in that first component, self efficacy, that's about results, that's about skill, that's about competencies, that's about knowing that you can handle what life throws at you. In the second component, that's really just about accepting your inherent worth. The first one's about value. The second one's about worth. And those are two very different things in my map. And something that really has stuck with me, um, is one of my mentors said, years ago, you're not fit for healthy romantic love until you're fundamentally comfortable being alone. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to be alone. That what that means is you'll compromise your values. You'll make decisions that you wouldn't make if you were fully honoring yourself. If you're afraid to be alone, you'll start to make choices that you wouldn't make. Or if you're an observer, you would say, I shouldn't be making these choices. So now that we know what self-esteem is, I also want to talk about what it is not. Self-esteem is not other people's opinions of you. So, knowledge of your competence, your efficacy, that's going to be results. That's going to be feedback based, but it's not personal. It's more practical. And then in terms of worthiness and self-acceptance, that's internal. That's self-validated. So in a way, there's nobody that can actually, like, if you relate to it this way, people can't negatively impact your self-worth unless you go, yeah, I think they're right. Like there's an ultimate, you're the ultimate decision maker. You're the authority of your self-esteem. It's self-esteem, not other esteem. So it's also not your reputation or the things that you acquire or your wealth or your social status. None of those things are self-esteem. Those are pseudo self-esteem. Self-esteem can actually, like, it doesn't matter where you are or what situation your life is in, that you accept that you're worthy and that you know that you're competent to navigate whatever's happening. So that's what it is and what it is not. And I think it's very important to lay those definitions out first. So first of all, you have to feel that you're worthy of love to be able to receive it. And it could be expressions of love. It could be, just being treated well. You have to feel that you're worthy of it to really let it in, to allow the level of intimacy, to allow the, and you have to be really confident in your capacity to love. You have to know that you're lovable. You have to really accept, because I think, most everybody's lovable, and I think everybody's worthy of a fulfilling relationship. That's that's the first part of it. But also, you're a lot less likely to settle for unfulfilling or unworkable relationships. If you have a high level of self worth, a high level of self acceptance, you're not only okay with what you want, you're accepting of your own desires, your own preferences, your own values, um, and your own standards. You're simply not going to sell yourself short, or not going to um, invalidate that. You're not going to listen to some of the outside chatter, like other people's opinions of who you should date or who you should be with or whether or not you should stay in a relationship. A lot of people impose their own values on their friends or on their, heck, even relationship coaches do it. They impose their values on their clients when they give them advice or when they say what kind of relationship you should have, or if you're in an incredibly unfulfilling relationship, some people will want you to. And I'm not saying you shouldn't make every effort if you're in love with somebody to make that work, but at some point there is a point where you realize it's fundamentally unworkable. And another thing that self-esteem will help you do is, in that situation, you're in a much more powerful position if you're a know that you're worthy of receiving good treatment. But also, if you have to leave, you won't have scarcity around whether or not you can find a fulfilling relationship, or whether or not you're going to be able to attract somebody else, or you're able to support yourself, or all these things go into some of the decisions I've seen people make when they don't have knowledge of their competence, and they don't have acceptance of their worthiness of receiving. So there's less fear about the future, but also it's far easier for you to tell the truth. For example, if I'm worried, like if I have low self-esteem and I'm worried about upsetting somebody by communicating a boundary, I don't have enough knowledge of my efficacy to communicate it, and I don't feel like, let's pretend I don't feel I'm worthy of being treated well, and I won't express a boundary. At, so if you have knowledge, if you have high self-esteem, not only will it be easier for you to communicate it, because you won't have to, be forceful about it. You can just go, yeah, I'm worthy of being treated well. But in addition to that, your way of being is such that it's woven into the fabric of who you are, how you operate, even how you hold yourself. Some people won't even try certain things with you that they would try with other people who have underdeveloped egos, or low self-esteem. I've heard stories. People tell me stories all the time about somebody who we know mutually who has done a certain thing, and I'm like, wow, they would never pull that shit with me. And it's partly because they know it would have no purchase. There's no place, there's no foothold for it with me. There just isn't, like, the way I hold myself. They're not going to try that stuff. And so the more you can rest in your worthiness of being treated well, and being worthy of a fulfilling relationship and receiving love, and knowing that you can navigate whatever life throws at you, whether that's suddenly you're single, or whether that's suddenly or you have to communicate something more difficult. And now communication skills are physical skills. They do take practice. And again, self-efficacy is knowledge of your competence. So, you do have to have practice and you have to gain those skills. But somebody with high self-esteem will know that they could. And they know that it's just a matter of practice, not that they're incapable of it, but they just haven't learned to do it well yet. You're far more likely to tell the truth, because again, you're not fearful of other people's reactions. One of the things that I've seen people with those, like the reason that people in codependent relationships are often have a deficiency in self-esteem, is because they're so afraid that, like, the way I define codependence, by the way, is that they're gaining their worth through the other person's evaluation of them. So if they like me, I'm a good person. If they don't like me, I'm a bad person. And if you have this at play, if you have these dynamics at play for yourself, consciously or unconsciously, you're going to be not only less of yourself, but it's going to show up as you not telling the truth, you not drawing boundaries, you sacrificing your own psychological health to make sure that they're happy. And self-esteem is the antidote to that. And the greater the ease you'll have, no matter what the outcome is, because you stand in that place of knowing your worth and knowing that you'll be able to handle it no matter what. There's also just generally less fear. There's less fear. So those are all the ways in which it's beneficial. Now the question is, how do you build it? Like, how do you build a healthy sense of self? How do you build a high self-esteem and healthy ego development? I consider all three of those virtually synonymous. The first part, of course, is knowledge so knowledge of your efficacy means that you have to have historical references. If you've never supported yourself before in life, it's going to be very difficult for you to have historical knowledge that you can take care of yourself. This is why it's difficult for people who've never supported themselves to make choices that are, it's very scary. That doesn't mean you can't. It means you have to be aware. Heat wave here. You have to be aware that that's operating for you in the background, and start to make small steps to like have small successes and notice the successes, whether it's learning a new skill or whether it's you know I don't know whatever it is for you, right? To know that you can handle whatever life throws at you. But start small and just notice your successes. And any failures you have, just notice that those aren't failures. Those are actually learning experiences, and that everybody, you actually learn more from the failures anyway in life. So as long as you're learning from it, it's also a net gain. But the second component is feeling that you're worthy of receiving, that you're to have self-acceptance, to realize that you're a child of God or a manifestation of the divine or a hologram of the universe, whatever your preferred metaphor is for who you are. The spirit manifests, right? Pure consciousness, whatever that is for you, whatever that source is. Nobody can give you a self-worth. You have to claim it for yourself. It has to be internally validated. Nobody can give you compliments to increase your self-worth. It might be good to get good feedback, but that's again practical, not personal. And we're talking about the internal personal validity. That's just a matter of accepting it. It really is just a moment, a choice point where you just open to it. And any internal, whatever stories you have in the past or whatever things you picked up in your formative years, because most of this stuff I'm talking about adults. I'm not talking about child self-esteem. Child's self-esteem, of course, is dependent because they still have a fused identity until they get into counterdependence in their teens. They still have a fused identity with their parents, so it's very easy for a parent to impact the self-esteem of a child. But that's a separate matter. We're talking about adults. And so if you don't have these capacities developed on the efficacy side, and if you don't have self-acceptance, then you're going to have a very, very hard time in most relationships, and most of your relationships aren't going to be functioning at a high rate. Where clean relating comes from, and yet another benefit of somebody with high self-esteem or high self-worth or um, or self-acceptance or a healthy ego is that they have less and less desire to control others. So they're also wonderful people to be around because they don't need to control others because they're not scared. One of the things that people with sometimes in codependent relationships, but also in who have a lower sense of where their center is. So we could talk about a sense of self as another good synonym for high self-esteem. If they don't have a solid sense of self, knowing who they are, knowing what they want, being confident that they're being right with that's okay, that their desires are okay, their desires are their desires. They have less and less desire to control people. Similarly, people who have low self-esteem will need to control others, either out of fear or out of a low-level ego thing. I need to control others to feel powerful, what have you. So those are all my random thoughts on self-esteem. It's good to see you guys again, or good to be seen again, I should say. I've been moving and setting up a new apartment and had some internet connectivity issues that are finally resolved. So we'll be back on track here. Now. Please join us tomorrow. Joe Bernard and I will be having a conversation about just what gets in the way of us accepting pleasure and love and intimacy. And that's Wednesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. London time. Thanks again for allowing me to contribute to you.